Rush Park Auditorium, October 10th, 2013, was the site of a disaster awareness and public safety summit billed as the Great Shakeout, covering basic personal and family response awareness to earthquake disasters and more.
Within the Sheriff's Department, you have your local...
Sponsored by the Rossmore Homeowners Association, this multi-speaker event featured vendors, demonstrations, raffles, and of course, the opportunity to learn disaster survival skills from some of the smartest people in the state. From Cal Emergency Operations Services reps to Orange County sheriffs, to local community emergency response team or CERT volunteers. A full house of interested citizens took the opportunity not only to listen to the speakers, but to peruse the vendor booths set up in the lobby. With basic life-supporting tools and information to share, we often don't think about until after a disaster has struck. Inside the conference room, RHA event coordinator and host for the evening, Cheryl Williamson, commences the proceedings with a Boy Scout color guard and salute to the flag.
With Ron Casey, who is the director of one of the boards of the directors of the Rossmore Community Services District. Ron, please come forward. The Rossmore Homeowners Association is very proud to have the Rossmore Community Services District support us so much, and especially us in this event. They've been more than generous in their time and their resources for us, and because of that, I'm having Director Casey acknowledge our thankfulness and call our color guard.
Thank you, Cheryl. Audience, please stand for the presentation of the colors. All Scouts, attention. Color Guard, attention. Color Guard, advance. Color Guard, halt. Color Guard, face. Will the audience please join me in the presentation of a Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color Guard, honor your colors. Color Guard, reform, forward. Color Guard, halt. Color Guard, at ease. Audience, at ease. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. We're going to have an excellent event this evening. We're going to be hearing from pros on emergency preparedness, our local threats and hazards, and how to get started today with an undaunting and doable emergency preparedness plan we call 3-Step E-Prep. This is a custom event for you, Rossmore, and our surrounding neighbors. We're going to be giving you resources on where to go for more information, and we're going to ask you to to do what I'm going to call the People's Choice Awards. That is to have you write down on your 3x5 cards who you'd like to hear more from, which of these speakers you'd like to come back for another event. We have a lot of information to cover tonight, and we'd like to have them all share their areas of expertise based on what you'd like to hear more about. It's a resource-packed evening. It's a school night, so we're going to do questions and answers also on those 3x5 cards. Fill them up. So we're going to collect the 3x5 cards at the end of the evening, and I'm going to have the emergency responders and the professionals respond to all of your questions, and we'll do it in writing. And we'll follow up with subsequent issues of the Rossmore Homeowners Association newsletter with those questions and answers for you, so you can see everybody's questions and answers and share in that information. Next, I'd like to invite to the podium Gary Stewart, the president of the Rossmore Homeowners Association.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm Gary Stewart. I'm the current president of the Rossmore Homeowners Association. I'd like to welcome all of you to the RHA-sponsored town hall event on emergency preparedness. Also like to thank our distinguished speakers, whom you'll hear more from later. And I'd like to especially thank Cheryl Williamson, who is just the majority of the responsibility for this event goes to her. She spent countless hours planning and promoting and lining up speakers for this event. Emergency preparedness is not a glamorous subject, certainly not sexy, but it's information that we all need to know. When an event like that occurs, such as Katrina or the storm last year on the eastern seaboard, if we're not prepared and we don't have a plan, the supplies and the information that we need, we could have a problem, because even the most optimistic estimates put first responders at hours to sometimes days before they can get to everybody. So this is vital information. These speakers are all very knowledgeable in the subject, and we hope that you'll all find this very informative and well done. One side note, just a small commercial. We do have an RHA table out in the foyer out there. We would invite any Rossmore residents who aren't members of the RHA to join so that we can continue. It's only through your support that we can continue to put on events like this. And for $20 a year, I think it's money well spent. So without further ado, I'll turn it back over to Cheryl and we'll get our program underway. Thank you very much.
We're going to have a special drawing for members of the Rossmore Homeowners Association. So I'm going to ask the color guard to please pass out additional 3x5 cards. And they're just going to give you a stack at the end of the row, and take one and pass it on if you are a member of the RHA. In addition to that drawing, there's 2 other drawings tonight for professionally prepared emergency preparedness kits, just for being here. And those sign-ups were in the lobby, so hopefully you had a chance to get registered for those drawings. I'd like to introduce Douglas Hulls with California Office of Emergency Services, called Cal OES. It was previously called Cal EMA, as in like FEMA, so that might ring a bell with some of you. Here he is.
Thanks, Cheryl. On behalf of Governor Jerry Brown, our director, Mark Garlarducci, and myself, I'd like to thank the Rossmore Homeowners Association for inviting me out today to give you a little bit of an explanation about what we do, and hopefully to get you prepared for any future disasters that might occur. My name is Doug Hulls. I'm the Deputy Regional Administrator for the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. We have an office here in Los Alamitos. We're actually located on the Joint Forces Training Base here in Los Alamitos. Basically, what we do is we maintain the state emergency plan. We coordinate overall state agency response to major disasters in support of local government. We assure the state readiness to respond to and recover from all emergencies. And we assist local governments in their emergency preparedness, response, recovery, and hazard mitigation efforts. Our vision is to enhance the safety and preparedness in California through strong leadership, collaboration, and meaningful partnerships. And then our mission is to protect lives and property by effectively preparing for, preventing, responding to, and recovering from all threats, crimes, hazards, and emergencies. Our organization is set up similar to the incident command structure. We have a director, Mark Gallarducci, at the top of our organization. We have 4 sections, if you will. We're set up with response and recovery operations, of which I'm part of. We have a planning, preparedness, and prevention area. We have a logistics management section and finance and admin. We've got 3 regions with Cal OES. We've got an inland region, a coastal region, and the southern region, which I'm part of. The southern region has 11 counties, include San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Ventura, Los Angeles, Orange, San Diego, Imperial, Riverside, San Bernardino, Inyo, and Mono up along the eastern Sierras. And again, our office here is on the Joint Forces Training Base, 5 minutes from here, and we cover the southern half of the state. We're responsible for about 22 million people. So when disaster strikes, what do we do? When emergencies exceed the capabilities of local resources, Cal OES activates the Regional Emergency Operations Center and the State Operations Center. Basically, all emergencies are local. So any disaster is managed by local city or fire, police. We don't step in, we don't manage the incident for you or anything like that. We're there to support the local agencies and the counties. So what hazards do you face? Wildfires, earthquakes, flooding, terrorism, biological, landslides, tsunamis, just to name a few. Obviously, the biggest threat we have probably here in California would be an earthquake. Our largest earthquake in recent history was 1994 Northridge earthquake, occurred on January 17th. It was a magnitude 6.7, had 57 deaths, over 11,000 injuries, and cost the state over $41 billion in damages. And just to give you a comparison, to the Northridge 6.7, you have the closest fault to you here would be the Newport-Inglewood fault. It has a maximum magnitude possible earthquake of a 7.2. That's about 17 times the size that occurred in Northridge. And then the Great Fort Tejon 1857 historic earthquake, which our Southern California Catastrophic Earthquake Plan is based on, was a 7.8 earthquake. That would be about 33 times the size of Northridge. So again, all these particular hazards could affect you. There's a website at the bottom here. You don't need to write it down. There's paperwork, a flyer out there on the tables that have all these websites that I'll refer to. Basically, if you go to this website, you can get information about all these different hazards and how they could possibly, what they are, how they affect you, and then what you can do to prepare for them. Also, there's a website that Cal OES sponsors called My Hazards. And basically, you can go into that website and put in your address. Looks like this. I put the address here in there before I came over. And then across the top, there's little flags here for earthquake, flood, fire, and tsunami. So you can go in and click on those, and it'll give you what your particular hazard is for those particular types of events. And then also it'll give you a list of recommended actions that you can take to make yourself more secure in case something like that happens. And then, so how should you prepare? Preparedness is everyone's job. Don't look towards the government immediately after a major event to come save you. We're not going to. It just isn't possible. You need to be able to help yourself for the first few hours to 72 hours to possibly even a week. So you need to prepare yourself and your community to be able to help each other. You must be able to react on your own. So be informed, make a plan, build a kit, and get involved. FEMA puts up a website, www.ready.gov. Again, has information on how you can be informed about more information about different hazards. It tells you how to make a plan, what you should do, make sure that you've got plans where you're going to meet your family after a major disaster, how you're going to get a hold of each other, things like that. On there it tells you how to build a kit, and then what you can do to get involved in your community, like the CERT program and other things like that. So that's it. That's my contact information. And again, there's a flyer out there on the table with those websites on it. So please check them out. There's a lot of good information on there. And that's what I got for you. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Every October, all along the West Coast, not just in California, we celebrate the Great Shakeout. And you all know what that is, apparently, right? We live here in Southern California. Our #1 nemesis is an earthquake, and we're going to have one someday, again, soon. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Earthquake Country Alliance, and they are part of the group that puts on the Great Shakeout. This is from their website, and you can see down at the bottom, we've got Cal OES, American Red Cross, FEMA, State Farm, USGS. I think that's Southern California Edison, is that? Or what is that? I can't even read it. Anyway, as of today, 9.3 million companies and individuals are registered for this event coming October 17th. Okay? What does this say? We're all in this together, guys. It's really a worthwhile effort. Ask your boss, what are we doing about emergency preparedness at work? Ask your schools, what are we doing about emergency preparedness for our schools? Well, as Doug mentioned, we're on the Newport Englewood Fault. And I was talking to the lady who was going to come speak on behalf of the Great Shakeout, and she thought we were the Rossmore up in Northern California. And she said, where are you exactly? And this is what I described to her. I described it to her seismically. I did not give her a street name or an address. I said, we're on the Newport Englewood Fault, right about here where it has a crook and goes along the coast. I said, all of our houses were built in the late 50s on a river floodplain. We have sandy soils, high water table, which equals potential liquefaction. And all new construction requires soils tests and mitigation for this potential liquefaction. And she said, you don't need me there. You can talk on my behalf. What is liquefaction? Do you guys, are you familiar with that term? That's where the water percolates up through the sand, and turns everything to quicksand and everything falls down. So, well, Doug showed you the same section of his website I'm showing you, but I like my tsunami map. That's fun to look at. Okay, guys, here's Rossmore. See how far the tsunami comes up into Rossmore? Fortunately, it's still at the river channel at that point. okay? So I don't think it's going to be really bad for us, but it used to be my previous evacuation plan before the tragedy in Japan happened. My previous evacuation plan included driving in the riverbed. I don't think I will be doing that anymore. So check it out, type in the address, and once you type in the address, you can hit any of these tabs, play it around. Once you're inside the map, you can push the map around. Okay, so it's easy to talk about earthquakes and tsunamis. Those are all kind of third-party things. They're inanimate things. We don't like talking so much about human-caused disasters, but we need to briefly touch on that. We need to be aware, not be scared, but be aware of our surroundings. Take a look at where you are tonight. There's going to be a little game later we're going to play on taking a look about where you are in your surroundings. It'll be for our 7th inning stretch later. Okay? So when you think about Rossmore, I had a realtor say, oh, we're fine, we're not going to be hit with terrorism. What have we got? A couple power plants down the street. And I thought, you're a realtor. There's a lot of property across the street from the power plants that goes from the Joint Forces training base all the way down to the ocean. That's not a power plant, but it says right there on the billboard at the corner of Westminster and Seal Beach Boulevard that it's a weapons station. So we need to be aware of our surroundings when we think about terrorism. Well, my friend said, well, you've talked about everything except Godzilla. Well, I thought I'd throw Godzilla in there too. On the Orange County Emergency Management Division's website, which they'll be speaking tonight, they've got for you PDFs you can download on terrorism, if you'd like some more information on that. I did want to read from you one little paragraph that a friend of ours who was going to speak tonight on terrorism was going to do, but he was unable to do that. He's out of town. He wrote me 5 eloquently written paragraphs. I'm just going to read one so you can ask him to come back and tell you more. He says, technology now allows stateless groups to organize, recruit, and fund terror operations so that as to able to unleash very lethal attacks. Previously, throughout history, to develop enhanced kill capacity, significantly larger financial investments and industrial capabilities were necessary. But now, with great advances in human understanding of biology and chemistry, the curves of cost and lethality have reversed. In effect, terrorist organizations can now potentially be almost as lethal as superpowers, so as to be able to execute attacks that could kill thousands, if not tens of thousands, in a single day. He goes on in the rest of his written notes that he gave to me to cite cyber terrorism, electromagnetic pulses, do-it-yourself websites that most recently inspired the Boston Marathon bombers. He goes on also to quote people like James Woolsey, Janet Napolitano, Leon Panetta, Chuck Hagel, and congressional commissions on these topics and more. I'm not trying to make you scared, I'm just trying to make you aware of what's around us. New York City recently practiced a practice on what would happen if the entire grid of New York City was taken down. Interesting. It was noticed by the rest of the world, and there are future plans, November 13th and 14th, for further exercises and drills in other major areas to be seeing what happens if we all turn off the lights. I have next the Orange County Emergency Management Group, Donna Boston. To start your show, just click over here.
Thanks.
I'll just do it for you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I recognize that you're all spending your Thursday evening learning about emergency preparedness. My guess is this is the choir I'm looking at. Yeah, I thought so. You like disasters as much as I do, right? I work for the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and within the Sheriff's Department, you have your local emergency management division. So for unincorporated county areas, we are your emergency planners. We plan for any kind of emergency that's going to be discussed tonight. And we work in a facility that most people don't even know exists. And we will respond to any major emergency that affects the unincorporated county area or the Orange County boundary. Anything within Orange County, we will assist incorporated jurisdictions, cities, with their emergencies. But in the unincorporated county area, we will command and control your disaster situations, and we will work to help you. Doug mentioned some of the disasters that you already know exist, right? You know it. If you've lived in Orange County for more than 5 years, you've seen stuff happen, right? You've seen fires in parts of the counties, you've seen flooding, you've felt earthquakes. That's not going to go away. You and I both know that. You probably also are pretty well versed in the population of Orange County. What's the population? More than 3 million. Yep, you know it. How do I get water to more than 3 million people when you don't have water for 2 weeks? So, my guess is that you expect your emergency management team, your public safety responders, you expect us to be able to help everyone, to be ready for anything that can happen in any area of the county. And that's our goal. The only problem is the odds are against us, right? It's pretty simple math when you really think about it. And yet we're ready. In Orange County, we are resource rich. We will tell you that. We have the best trained law enforcement, the best trained firefighters. We have amazing resources. In Orange County, we work together with all of the water districts to buy 11 water trailers so that we can station them around the county when you don't have water for over 3 million people. 11 trailers for more than 3 million people. We're doing our best, but it's still a drop in the bucket. Did you like that little connection there? Okay, so why do I say we're ready, and then I'm going to tell you we're ready, and then I'm going to tell you you need to be ready? Well, we're doing a whole lot of work to make sure that the county, the cities, the water districts, the school districts, that we're all ready together to respond. So we put systems in place. We work together on our partnerships, and I might tell you here that any bullet on this I could probably speak to you for a couple of hours about, but I'm not going to do that. We work together with countless agencies to be able to rapidly mobilize and deploy resources to where they're needed most. And we triage our problems. We sort our problems based on life safety, right? We're going to put the resources where they need to be inserted and used where they're most needed to save the most lives. Again, that translates into your preparedness, right? And you've heard that before. In the county, we have executive level involvement into our emergency plans. When you watch 60 Minutes or you watch your nightly news and you watch other areas of the country experiencing disaster and you hear about how it's not going well, it's not going right, we put things in place so it goes the best that it can. We plan every single day for emergencies that can affect our population, and yet we know those playbooks that we create, well, your disaster is never going to go according to that playbook, right? That's your liftoff point. Anybody in the military kind of knows that, right? You plan, and then you adjust your plan because what happened wasn't exactly what you wrote. We train that way. We exercise our forces and we bring them together on a regular basis to train and exercise together. We invest in our radio systems so that we can all speak on the same radio. We work on master mutual aid agreements so that we work out agreements on how we're going to respond before it happens here. You watch what unfolded on the East Coast at the Navy Yard, right? We already had agreements in place with our bases here in Orange County on how our law enforcement will respond in, because we believe that it's a possibility. And we work on innovation daily on how we're going to speed up and make our response to any situation, we're going to make it better. We don't think that it's okay to watch how a disaster unfolds in another part of the country, watch lives be lost, and to not improve here. And that's been a practice in California for decades. So you might be curious. So what's going to happen in the next disaster? Who's going to respond? How are we going to coordinate? How are we going to help? Because I think on your program it says I'm going to talk about emergency response and emergency volunteers. Well, who's going to respond? All of you will respond, right? I mentioned that I think that I'm preaching to the choir. So I'm hoping that this is a group that is going to be prepared, that you are going to respond and check on your neighbors, and you will render aid if it's necessary. You'll help each other out. Emergency responders are going to do just that. We're going to work to find out where the hottest spots are, and we're going to push our effort to help them there. We're going to be mobilizing all sorts of emergency responders, professional emergency responders. We'll activate state teams, federal teams, and it will take them time to get into the area. In the meantime, your local emergency responders will be saving lives, right? And you know, you've seen it on the news how they're going to do it. They run in, when the fire's burning, they run in and they save lives. They respond to the rubble pile, and they have their search dogs helping them find the people that are buried under the rubble. Our volunteer organizations will be there with us. We practice that way, we train that way. Red Cross, Salvation Army, your faith-based churches that have emergency responders, they will be with us. We plan with them daily. We work with the private sector, and that's a regular occurrence, especially on something like a flood. We'll call up Home Depot and tell them we need 100 shovels delivered to the canyon with buckets, gloves, and they'll deliver them. And we work on that ahead of time so that we can make those tough calls. And we work with community members. We're glad, I have a team that I work with, but I came out tonight because I care about making sure that our community is prepared. Because this is where it counts. Making sure that you take the right responses following any kind of emergency situation. Douglas mentioned how we're going to coordinate. We use systems to coordinate. You trust that we use those systems, and we will. We're going to have to train to them. We're going to have to practice them. We're going to activate those volunteer organizations. We actually have an organization called Collaborative Organizations Active in Disasters. We have a system to bring together all of those nonprofits and unaffiliated agencies, you know, like a food bank, and fold them into a disaster response. People that you might not think are a typical emergency response organization. They have a different function on a daily basis, like the rescue mission. We work with the rescue mission because they have a disaster response arm that does an entirely kind of different thing. And we work with them ahead of time to be able to rapidly mobilize them. Nonprofits and volunteer organizations can do things that governments can't do. I can't get you a gas card if your home burnt down, but the Red Cross can. The rescue mission, through their wing called Operation OC, they can do that for me, and it helps me help my community. And again, it gets down to those partnerships. We work with all of these organizations so that we can rapidly respond to you to give you the best level of service and the best information following an emergency. How can you help? You know I'm going to tell you to be prepared, but you don't know what I'm going to ask you to do next, so stay tuned here for a second. I know it's hard on a Thursday night. Make sure your emergency kit is updated. For those of you in the workforce, make sure your employers are looking at emergency preparedness and emergency response for your businesses or agencies that you might happen to work with. Get involved and volunteer. People that respond with the Red Cross, they do it out of the goodness of their heart, and they do help people every single day. It's not the time to volunteer, to try and volunteer after the disaster strikes. The time is before. To get your training, the Red Cross has a lot of different training programs to offer you. And there are local community emergency response team training classes that will give you the skills, knowledge, and abilities to respond to any situation. Now, okay, I told you I was going to ask you to do something. This is the choir again. I'm expecting that you have a higher level of preparedness than the people that are not at this meeting. For those of you that don't know what Alert OC is, I want you to go on the website or call my phone number that's going to be at the end of this program, and you can use either of those two ways to go and register for what we call Alert OC. This is our emergency notification system. This is what my team uses to call you to notify you of an emergency. This is what we will use to call you if there's some horrendous barricaded suspect close to you. We will use this system and we will call you and tell you to stay inside. We will use this system to call you and tell you to boil your water if there's a problem with your water safety. So this is that system. It's Alert OC. Now make sure you don't go and register for Orange County, Florida. Okay? It's alertoc.com. And if you want to take, probably, I don't know, 80% of you probably have smartphones. You can take a picture of this slide right now if you want to. Or you can take a picture of my phone number later. The next thing, okay, so you're going to get registered. Oh, by the way, I'd like you to register all your family members if they live in Orange County. Talk to them about that. Talk to your neighbors about it. Make sure you're not the only one getting that phone call and having to run door to door and tell everybody. Make sure everybody's getting that phone call. That phone call will go to all the landline telephones, but it won't go to your mobile phones, and that's why we want you to go on and register. Register your mobile phones. If you have mobile phones that get texts will also be sent, and emails. The next step is to make sure that your preparedness kit is up to date. This is your emergency preparedness resource. It's called Ready OC. It's on the internet, and you can go here and watch great emergency preparedness videos. You can update your kit. There's a quick print list that you can take to Target or Walmart and update your kit very easily. And this will serve as something that, for those of you that are on Facebook, that you could actually like it and share it with your friends and tell them to get prepared too. Because if you're the most prepared person on your block, guess where everybody's coming? My neighbors have told me this, by the way. They say, we're coming to your house. And I say, all right, well, you know, you're going to have to take care of them, my husband and my kids too, because I'm going to work. Which is what you expect me to do, right? Absolutely. Okay, the next piece is something that you've been hearing more and more about ever since 9/11, right? We know that we're supposed to tell people if we see a suspicious bag at the airport, right? Well, what if you see one at the Orange County Marathon? Or what if you see one at Disneyland? What are you going to do? If you see something suspicious, you should say something. You should tell someone. And we know, Douglas and I plan for disasters every day. There's stuff that I know that I am not allowed to tell you. I take it very seriously. This is another public education campaign that we have going on in Orange County. It's related to Ready OC. And definitely, if you see something, say something. If you see this red backpack around the county, that's our campaign to raise awareness. A huge red backpack is so out of place that people walk up to it and say, oh, I get it. It's enormous. And they say, the light kind of goes on. If I see something out of place, if I see somebody taking pictures where it doesn't make sense for them to take pictures of security guards or the way something is secured, I should tell somebody, I should report it. So those are the main pieces that I'm going to talk to you tonight about. And you can call this number for more emergency preparedness information. We do have people in the office that will help you register for Alert OC so that you don't have to go online yourself. They'll do it for you, for your mobile phones, etc. If you have any questions about the county's preparedness, feel free to call that number. We'll be happy to talk to you about it. And unless there are any questions. Thank you very much.
I need some student helpers, please, to help us with the collection of the RHA membership cards. If you're a member and you've put your name on the card for the drawing, fold it in half and pass it down to the end of the row that way, please. Thank you. The Rossmore Homeowners Association is all volunteers. Donna asked us to volunteer. The Rossmore Homeowners Association Emergency Preparedness Committee, of which I am the chairperson, is an all-volunteer committee. We need you. Even if you are part of the choir, we need you. Thank you. Next, we have the Orange County Sheriff's Department. We have Ed Carlson and Steve Parkins.
Thank you, Cheryl. My name's Steve Parsons. I'm with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. I'm a reserve deputy. I've been with the Sheriff's Department for 22 years as a reserve. And what I'm here to talk to you guys about, I'm already getting scared. These guys are, these earthquakes, man, they're scary. So I'm going to talk to you about another thing that the Sheriff's Department does here in Orange County. Besides law enforcement, this is the main, it looks like a bunker, doesn't it? Well, it is. It's the main emergency operations center for Orange County. It's up at the top of Santiago Canyon there in the Saddleback, and it's the main communication center for the county. It's located about 1,300 feet there at Loma Ridge, there on the top of the mountain, and it will house 140 people for 2 weeks, food, water, and it's self-contained. It should have been on preppers. It's 7,000 square feet of concrete. So I've been up there a few times and saw it in operation. It's pretty impressive. The whole thing is also the 911 call center for the county. It's also the coordination for all the communications for the county and the municipalities, all the cities, in the case of an emergency. Now, if this facility gets activated, there's several different agencies that control it. This is partly ran by the Red Cross, the CHP, Caltrans, Orange County Sheriff, Orange County Fire Authority, healthcare agencies, the Water Emergency Services. City Council has a seat here, Public Works. All these agencies have a seat. It's like a big conference table, and they're all watching TVs and monitors around them, and they're all making decisions on what's going to happen in case of emergencies. It's ready to go. And it's all, you know, it's all very interesting, I'm sure, but when it all comes down to it, these facilities here, when you go to call 911, you know, who knows if it's going to work? You're going to be sitting in the dark at home, basically with what you got in the refrigerator. And I know you guys all live in the area here, and it's been proven that only 1% of the population is prepared. And I know that 1% is probably Cheryl sitting in this room here. And you're all going to be knocking on her door, Cheryl, I need food. So what it comes down to is it's really up to you. It's your responsibility for your family and your community to be prepared. And you know, if you would like Cheryl to have me come back, or some of my partners here, and help you put together a real nice little package for preparedness. You need something for like a go bag, or we call a war bag, or something to throw in your car and go. That's good for 3 days. Another one may be for 3 months in your house somewhere, non-perishable foods. But it's very important for all of you to do that for your families and your community, so you don't end up at Cheryl's house. So that's all I have, really, and I want to introduce Ed Carlson. He's my partner here, and he's also a reserve for the Sheriff's Department. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Rossmore Homeowners Association, for this opportunity to invite the Sheriff's Department to come in and speak to you. I'm a professional services responder. It's a volunteer position. I noticed that Steve did not try to recruit you for the Sheriff's Department or the Sheriff's deputies, but I will try and recruit you for the professional services responder. It's much easier to do, believe me. So we have a mission statement. Everybody has a mission statement. This one I cut down so it's a manageable level. The purpose of our professional service responder is to recruit highly successful professional men and women, forward-thinking, action-oriented, on a voluntary basis, who have leadership and professional skills as they relate to the Orange County mission that Steve supports and I support. As a responder and volunteer, I support the following areas: emerging technologies, computers, communications, radios, industrial relations, graphic arts, healthcare, lots of stuff, international protocol, emergency response resources, and that's the unit that I'm in, that's the search and rescue group, community service, and that all sounds pretty heavy, but I also get to go to the Orange County Fair and work with the Bloodhounds, which is a lot of fun, and I man the lost parent booth, which means kids come up to us and say, my parents are lost. And believe me, there's more kids coming up. The parents don't seem to go to the booth, but the kids finally get there and they say, my parents are lost, and we find them. So that's the fun part of it. So here are some of the volunteer opportunities you have. There are about 7 that Steve also is involved in, and I as a volunteer are involved in. If you like airplanes, there's the Aero Squadron and airport operations at John Wayne. It's pretty neat. Community programs, there's so many that I can't even talk about how many there are, but you'll get the idea with all the people here. Crime prevention, I think they've been to Rossmore. I'm not sure. I think I have a picture of them here. High-tech services, that's the radio guys who communicate when all the cell phones go down. Urban search and rescue, that's me. Have a lot of fun doing that. And something that Steve has done for 22 years, harbor patrol. If you like boats and water, that's the way to go. To join the PSR team, you just need to call this reserve office. There are cards out at the table, little business cards, have that telephone number there. They'll send you information to do a personal history statement. You'll get a personal background interview. There will be a background investigation because it is the Sheriff's Department. You pass all of that, you're good to go. So here are some of the areas. Here's my group up here, the search and rescue group, and there's all the Bloodhounds. There's Steve's harbor patrol area. I think that's a photo here in the Rossmore area of the crime prevention unit. If you like to do community service, you might want to drive a Hummer. Probably one time, and you won't ever drive it after that. It's not too comfortable. There I am at the Orange County Fair. That was a lot of fun. And if you're into airplanes and flying and stuff, I think Steve is going to transfer over there soon, so that's the group for you. Now I have a challenge for you. Here's the challenge. There are currently 342 volunteers like myself across those 7 units for the Orange County Sheriff's Department. A recent audit showed that there are no professional service responders from the 9072 area code. That's here. So the challenge is, I'd love to have 5 members of you call that number and join the professional services responder group. There's a word called force multiplier. In the Sheriff Department, there's over 3,800 sworn officers. There's over 800 reserve officers like Steve, and I said there's 342 volunteers like myself. Now, 5 of your members who joined this organization are going to understand what the Sheriff Department can do for community service and for emergency services. Those 5 members, or however many, are going to bring that force multiplier back to your community. So when you really need it, they'll know what to do. You'll have the connection directly. You won't have to go through anybody else. You talk to your 5 members. They'll get you in the right direction and make sure you're represented really well here in Orange County. That's all I have. Oh, one more. Let me, how do I go back on this one? Back, B? I'm going to go back to that last slide. Okay, so there's got to be something there that piques your interest. That's the beginning. Find something you like, join us, and then you're going to find out about the Orange County Reserve and Professional Service Provider Department. I thank you very much.
Well, I think it'd be kind of fun to have the dogs come and learn about the search and rescue dogs. Okay, next I'd like to introduce Angela Garbiso with the Orange County Fire Authority. There you go.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having us here today. I represent Orange County Fire Authority. My name is Angela Garbiso, and I'm not a firefighter. All right, I am. My job is community relations and education, so I am constantly out with the public. And if you've seen, I drive a multitude of red vans throughout the county. Please wave at me as I'm driving by. And you know, on another note, we're going to have a discussion about why aren't any of you inviting me over for dinner so we can have these discussions? So we're going to talk about that. Before we go into anything, I wanted to discuss that we are actually invite all of you on Saturday to our annual open house. It is Fire Prevention Week, and the theme this year is cooking safety. I hope that you're able to attend. It's a free event, food, family, games, education on a variety of topics as relating to a variety of different disasters and fire and life safety topics. So please come and join us. It's where off the 5 where Jamboree and Tustin Ranch Road intersect. How many think you can make it? Huh? I hope, all right. Again, you know, I wasn't quite sure what my counterparts' slides were going to be like. So you see, we just have a variety of disasters. Is it a bit overwhelming to look at all of this? It is, isn't it? It is. It's like, where do you start? And so I think a lot of us get paralyzed with that thought process. Do you agree with me on that one? Yeah, so you're like, where do I go? So I think it's my suggestion and my recommendation is you bite off a little bit at a time. Write that list out month by month. Kind of come up with a plan as to what you're going to do that makes sense to you. And you know, it comes to that supply kit. We all know the one thing we can't live without: water. And I ask all of you right now, how many of you drove tonight here in a vehicle? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. My question is, how many of you have at least 3 days worth of water in that vehicle right now? Good to know. Wow, that's like a record breaker for me when I go out and ask. That's fantastic. Now, how many of you right now have 3 days of medication on you? At least 3 days. If something should happen right now, are you ready right now? What? Okay, in your car, it's in your car. Okay, great, you have it close to you. That's fantastic. So just things to kind of tickle that thought process. The reality in a disaster is that there is going to be an altered emergency response. So right now you think about it. When you call 911 right now, about how long is it going to take for them to respond? Pretty quick, right? 5 to 9 minutes, right? They're going to be here pretty quick. Or, well, we have people here too. So it was a little, let's pretend, okay? But in the event of a major disaster, is that going to be the same case? It's not. And that's the thing we all have to wrap our brain around and really understand that it's not going to be there. When calling 911 is not going to have the same outcome as it does today. So you have to really think about how you are able to take care of yourself. And again, I understand it's overwhelming, but please just come up with a plan. Take a little bit, and let's face it, is it expensive to get all these things together? It is. So budget it out. What are the things, and I always ask people, what are the things that you absolutely have to have? Water. Right? Those medications. And again, and then all the other things after that, it's kind of a personal thing. You know, I mean, there's some very important things to have, obviously, and you probably already have them. It's just gathering them up in one place. But really think there are those things that people start putting in that they think they might need, but you have to really, that's a very personal decision that you're all going to make. And if any of you have grandchildren that stay with you, how many of you have grandchildren that come to stay with you at all? Any of you? Okay. How many of you have small children? Anybody has small children? Well, if that's the case, then are you prepared for those long times of stress in keeping them busy? Right? Because are they going to drive you nuts? Yeah, probably. So think of that. So I told you, it's going to be a little bit different. And from the fire department perspective, it's, you know, you guys know that usually the fires, they're going to respond. But when there's a major disaster, the way we approach it is completely different. We have to triage first. We have to sit there and we assign the priority to the disaster victims or where, and I took this out of Merriam-Webster. We triage first. This is exactly what we try to do. We actually, in a major earthquake or any type of earthquake, we pull the rigs out on the driveway, the apron, and we have to assess our own structures first before we go anywhere and do it. And we take a roll call on the radios and establish what we're going to do, and then we go from there. It's thought out, and so it's not as we always respond, right? And do you think the lines to 911 are going to be a little jammed? Absolutely. So these are the things I just want you, again, wrap your brain around this and how that's going to be. And we can go back in history and look at Katrina and look at Colorado just recently and look, it takes a bit of time for those resources to come from the outside in. We have what we have. We're dialed as we can be, and like Mrs. Boston said, it's one of those things where we have the playbook, but that playbook is a very dynamic situation when a disaster occurs. Do you all get that? All right. I'm trying to wake you up, okay, too. That's the other part. So you think, then after we triage, you have that rescue response. It's a little different. Like I said, the need for self-sufficiency, that preparedness and knowledge, having that is paramount. But we can sit here everybody's going to speak to you about this, but who's in charge of that ultimately? You are. Exactly. That communication is critical. And here's the one thing I always ask people to do. Practice scenarios daily. When you're in the car driving, think about it. You're at a bridge or you're at a stoplight sign or a stoplight, and you think, if something happened now, make up a scenario. What am I going to do? The more you practice that, do you think you might be a little bit better at reacting? Just to practice that. We have to practice that behavior because it isn't real natural, is it? And is it hard for us to change our behaviors? Really hard, isn't it? So that's that. But on a lighter note, or not lighter, but yeah, wow. Whoa, okay. We talk about disasters, and everyone here is talking about the major, major disasters. And this is a disaster as well. It's very true. And it's the reason I go back to saying none of you are inviting me over for dinner to talk about home fire safety. But the reality is, I come to these types of events, I go to schools, and I go to businesses. And where are the fire deaths occurring? In the home. And so in the approach that I like to take is, a lot of people invite me to say, hey, come show us how to use a fire extinguisher, or come tell us how to do this. And most of it's response. Everybody wants to respond to it, and I understand that. But look, I really hope that you don't have a fire to begin with, right? We don't want that to happen. And that's where I go back to that behavior, the fact that if we do certain actions, then we won't have those fires. And so these are the things I would like you to take away tonight from from me, is that I hope you could, number one, come to open house, but also that you look at the cooking safety. Look at these 3 very easy things. If we did all of those behaviors, if we watch what we're cooking, if we check our ovens before we turn it on, and if we keep our stovetop clean, we wouldn't have fires in the home. We wouldn't have cooking fires. And that's, and so think about that. How many of us walk away to go do laundry or watch TV or do something else because we've cooked that dish 100 times and we know that it takes 20 minutes to simmer, right? But how many times does it take for a fire to occur? 1 time. If you can, please stay. If you have to walk away, take a timer. Take it with you, put it on you, and that. Again, electrical safety. If you have a contractor that's licensed and you have them install and do the work correctly, if you keep those electric items clean, like any type of dryer lint or any type of exhaust fan, if you unplug small appliances, we're not going to have those electrical fires. Simple things, right? But again, instead of you having to respond to that fire, if you practice these behaviors, will we have the fire? No. And I know, everybody has smoke alarms here, right? Right, okay. And my thing I'm thinking about lately, as I've been saying, I think people have smoke alarms, they see them there, and they think that by virtue of them being there, they must be working. So my big thing is, let's test, and you hear us say test them, and we ask you to test them monthly, and I go out all the time, and I know people are not testing them monthly, but I ask, ask yourself, are they working? Are the smoke alarms working? How old are they? Because if they're older than 10 years old, that sensor, it's not going to work the way it should. Check on the back of that smoke alarm. See if they're older than 10 years old, replace them, please. And do you have an outside meeting place? And have you talked about it as a family? Have you practiced it? And those are the things that I'm going to leave you with today, and I thank you so much, and be prepared for any disaster.
Is Monica here this evening? I didn't see her come in. Okay, I want to say a little bit on behalf of the American Red Cross. How many of you got your first aid certification like when you were like a kid? How old were you? 12? I was 12 when I first got my first aid certification. Well, how many of you are certified in CPR? It's changed. When I went back and got recertified about 3 years ago, it changed a lot. So you ever heard of a Super CPR Saturday? They have them out at Angel Stadium. Absolutely a ton of fun, best Saturday you'll ever spend. I went out there with a bunch of Boy Scouts a couple years ago, and we got our first aid certification and our CPR certification done in one day. Bunch of pros, very good, very informative. You take the tests out there. They've got a lot of great vendors. You can buy excellent supplies for your emergency kits, first aid kits. I highly recommend it. You can go check on the American Red Cross's website as to when the next Super CPR Saturday is. We also heard tonight that the American Red Cross is volunteers. As with professional responders and volunteers, I might ask you, if there's a major disaster and it affects the family of the professional responders and the volunteers, what do you think is the chances they're going to attend to their family first? It's a pretty good chance. I mean, we all love our families. So that's even more reason to be prepared, right? We're going to start today. One other thing before going to the next slide. Angela mentioned about bite off a little time and how the costs of proper emergency preparedness and disaster plans can be fairly high. My brother is in law enforcement, my sister-in-law is in law enforcement, and my brother is always haranguing on me to buy more, properly prepared food, what you might call C rations. And he said, think of it this way. He said, what insurance policy can you buy that you have an initial one-time cost and no premiums, ever? He said, this is a life insurance policy to save your life. You have one initial cost and no additional premiums. And when I look at it that way, I thought, that's not a bad price to pay. Okay, we're going to do a 7th inning stretch. Would you like to help us with this, Angela? I thought I emailed you about this, no? It was the visualization thing. Remember she said, like, be aware of your surroundings, and she was talking about, when you go to the restaurant, look around. Okay, so everybody, we're going to stand up. We're going to stretch. And we're going to close our eyes.
Oh, okay.
Are your eyes closed?
Everybody close your eyes. And I would like you to think about how many exits there are here in this room. Or actually in this building. Let's make it bigger. Do you know how many exits are in this building right now? Do I give them the answer yet, Cheryl? Can I give the answer? Sure. I can't. There are 7. Everybody can open their eyes. And so if you want to keep standing up, I understand. But if you want to sit down, you may. But that's exactly it. There are 7 exits. 7 exits. Now, where did everybody come in from for the majority of you? Back there. And again, it goes back to, you understand that if a major disaster or something occurred, our natural tendency is going to be to go back out where we came in. So again, look at the other exits and other ways out of the building that you could do. Cheryl asked me to go ahead and speak about smoke inhalation as well, and I wanted to talk about that. Obviously, that is the thing that most people succumb to when there is a fire. And also, whenever there's a major disaster, especially like an earthquake, the result of fire is much higher and very dangerous. So we often, I tell people a lot of times, we've given mixed messages to people for a long time regarding fire. From the time you were 2 years old, what did you first learn put out fire? Water, right? But then going back to those cooking fires, what's the worst thing we can put on a cooking fire? Water. So and again, I go back to, we have our highest injury rate is males ages 20 to 29 in cooking fires. And I actually go out and speak to them, asking them, why is this happening? And they'll tell you, well, they're distracted, they're not very good cooks, all these other things. But part of that is that they need to understand that they need to be able to learn the proper behavior, and they need to be able to react accordingly. And that's really important when that comes to that. So the cooking fires is something that we take into account, and they do get injured, and we don't want that to happen. But back to so you learn they go back to what they first learned, and those 20 to 29-year-olds, what do you think they put on that fire? Water. And so we have to retrain that thought process in getting them, number one, not to have a fire, and number two, what to do, the proper response afterwards, and turning off the heat and covering and taking away that oxygen. That smoke inhalation, though, the reason I want your smoke alarms to work is because people, if they are not that talk about insurance policy, that's an insurance policy. Those smoke alarms were invented in the 1970s out of a federal commission that wrote America Burning. It's a book. That's when fatalities and fires in homes were at an all-time high, and they knew something had to be done. So this was one of the things. They created the smoke alarm. The thing of it is I think that some people still have those same smoke alarms since the 1970s. So we need to rethink that, because we want people to hear that smoke alarm. We want them, and if you have one in the kitchen, take it out of the kitchen, because it's going to go off all the time. And what happens? We call that a nuisance alarm. What do you do when you have something that just goes off all the time? Yeah, and you disconnect it, right? So put them in the hallways leading to the bathroom. Make sure they're in the bedroom, or hallways leading to the bedrooms, and any sleeping areas have to have them. And just again, go back and do that. That smoke, we ask people to remember to crawl low and go. And the other thing I know this is a side note, I want you to think about this. When you go to bed tonight, I want you to look at your living space around you. And I always say this with an earthquake. I always say Jolly Green Giant picks up a snow globe and shakes it really, really hard and puts that snow globe back down. So think about your bedroom. If Jolly Green Giant came and shook your bedroom violently, ideally the best place for you to stay is in that bed. You should be able to ride it out. How safe are you? How safe are you? Good? Or, could a bookcase fall on you? Could a lamp fall on you? Could a picture fall on you? How many of you feel really good about your space at night? Good. You guys are great. That's wonderful. All right. Well, what else did you want me to speak about? Okay. That's a 7th inning stretch. Yay. Okay.
So we're trying to be aware, we're trying not to be scared, and that was fun. Count the exits, right? So good practice, thank you. Okay, next we're going to have Wink Chase, and he's going to talk about CERT. Community Emergency Response Team. In addition to your Red Cross training, this is the best thing you can do to invest in yourself. Absolutely invest in yourself and training. Worth it. Wink.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here tonight. I'm looking for the finger.
You got it.
There you go.
There you go.
Gonna do it again. There we go. Who here can tell me if the ground started shaking right now, what do you do? What? Drop. Cover. I will show you what you do. You drop where you are. Be mindful of where you're sitting. You want to sit under one of these, you might want to take a couple of steps the other way. I'm under that, but this is demonstration time. You drop where you are. I have two vital parts of my body I need to protect, my eyes and my spinal column. I am right-handed. I will take my offhand and protect the back of my head. I will take my other hand and cover my eyes, and I will make myself as small as I possibly can. We got the drop on you up here because we got something to get under. If you get under something, the hold on part is, let's see, there's a lot of gray hair in this room. You'll understand what I'm talking about. If we get the big one, you are going for an e-ticket ride. Anybody remember that? I have said that to audiences of young people and they just get blank stares. I gotta check the rest of this before I say that. If you're under something, you want to get under something solid, not under a glass table or something like that. And that's where you hang on because you can be going for a ride. The long and short of it is if we get the big earthquake, you're going to be on the ground. You might as well go there under your circumstances and your control rather than the earthquake's control. That's tip number one. Tip number two, and Angela talked a little bit about this, be mindful of your bedroom. Anybody know what the number one injury or cause of injury is during an earthquake? Falling objects, not just lamps, but things falling on you. Be aware of your surroundings. You know the number one injury after an earthquake? Cut feet. It came from over here. That's exactly right. So here's another tip for you. When you go to bed tonight and every night, have a pair of shoes by your bed. Do you wear glasses? I see quite a few people wearing glasses here. You might want to put your glasses nearby. You want another tip? Put them in a bag and tie them to your bed, because if the bed's going, your stuff will go with you and you'll be able to find it. Does that make sense? This is not rocket science. Is anybody here kind of tired of hearing about preparation? We've been talking about it ad nauseum for a long, long time. Let me tell you a quick little story. And I understand, and I'm being very respectful of your time. You've been a great audience. You've been very patient. And I understand that I'm between you and going home, so I'm mindful of that. But has anybody here heard the name Rick Rescorla? Rick Rescorla was the Vice President of Security for Morgan Stanley, and responsible for 3,700 people at the World Trade Center back in the early 2000s. Rick Rescorla is one guy. He and a friend of his predicted the 1993 bombing attack on the World Trade Center. They understood. They did a kind of a survey of what was going to happen or what could happen, kind of playing what if. And what did happen is exactly what they thought would happen. He had taken some steps to secure his people. He talked to the Port Authority about trying to take some additional steps. They decided not to do it. It was too expensive. After that was over, Rick went back and he kind of reanalyzed his plan, and he shored some things up. And he again predicted that somebody would fly an airplane into the World Trade Center at some point. Now he thought it might be a cargo plane full of gasoline or something. He didn't think of passenger planes, but he knew at some point that was going to happen. He's got in Tower 2, there were 2,700 people that are working for Morgan Stanley that Rick's in charge of. He started having drills. He had floor monitors. He had all kinds of systems in place. We talked about systems earlier. And he did one really critical thing with those systems. He practiced. And if you can imagine a company like Morgan Stanley with all the high worth individuals they have and the people working with the kind of money they're working, they're not real excited to have a fire drill in the middle of their gazillion-dollar deal conversation up there. But he did it, and he required everybody to have an escort. He required everybody to know how to get out of the building. When the plane hit, he called for the evacuation. He saved 2,700 people because he had a plan and he practiced his plan. He lost 16 people. He was one of them. Most of them were security. He had one vice president who decided not to participate because he was too important or didn't think it was going to happen. And he had one guy who got into an elevator. You ever see the signs that say, take the stairs? One guy perished because he got in the elevator. But only 16 out of 2,700 people, I'd say that's a hell of a victory. Okay, the point is, he understood what could happen, and he took steps to have a plan, and he practiced. He practiced over 8 years. Can you imagine how obnoxious people thought he was over those 8 years? I'm sure he didn't have a lot of friends, and he didn't care. I'm here to talk about CERT training, and I will ask you a very simple question. Which one do you want? You want to be part of the solution or part of the problem? And most of it, if you're here, my guess is part of the solution. And that's where CERT training comes in. It's been alluded to. We've talked about fires and fire extinguishers. Does anybody here have a fire extinguisher? Has anybody here used a fire extinguisher? Does anybody think it might be important to know how to use a fire extinguisher if you have one? Has anybody had their fire extinguisher serviced recently? Okay, those should be serviced at least yearly. Okay, another tip, write that down. I will give you a little acronym. It's PASS, P-A-S-S. If you have a fire extinguisher, you pull the pin. That's the P. You aim. That's the A. You squeeze the handle. And you might want to get low, and if it's outside, have the wind at your back, not at your front. You think that might be smart? And you spray, you sweep. Okay? Pass. Pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. Okay? We will teach you that in CERT. If you want to take CERT training, we have one coming up. It's typically at the base. It'll be in the springtime. I don't know the exact dates. Pat and Roberta are in the back. We may not have set those yet. One of the things we teach you is how to react to fire. We teach you about what fire is. We don't. Orange County Fire does. We teach you about what happens in a fire, how they happen, how you can extinguish them, how the number one thing we will teach you, and this is the number one critical thing to remember as a responder, is we'll teach you how to stay safe yourself. If you go down, what happens to me if we're in a response mode? I lost one responder and I have one more victim, so you just really screwed the system up. In addition to that, we can teach you how to search a building safely, how to determine whether you can enter a building and how to search it. Actually, we don't. Orange County Fire does. We will, so that you can know how to help people in an emergency. Is anybody here taking first aid? I will tell you that disaster first aid is different than regular first aid. Probably 40% of the people who die in any type of disaster could be saved with 3 very simple steps. We will teach you those three very simple steps. You don't know where you're going to be when a disaster hits, or something significant hits. You can use these skills and talents anywhere you are. One of the biggest problems that we find in a disaster situation, and this happened at the World Trade Center, they did a study on how long it took people to evacuate once they got the word to evacuate. 6 minutes. Does that seem like a long time to you? It does to me. People, it's called normalcy bias. If you're taking notes, you can Google it, normalcy bias. But what happens is people, they don't know what's going on. They have no frame of reference, so they'll start gathering things. They were gathering all kinds of weird stuff to take with them. Books and just weird stuff, and then finally they would go down to get out. And obviously, if you waste 6 minutes in a situation like that, you might not be one of the people who gets out. We will teach you how to lead a group of volunteers. We will teach you how to lead and recognize situations. Our motto, the motto of our CERT team, is Semper Gumby. Anybody heard of Semper Fidelis? Any Marines in the room? Always faithful. We are Semper Gumby, always flexible. Cheryl mentioned, the plan never worked. The plan can be perfect until you induce the human element. And then we have a problem. So we will teach you how to adapt to those kinds of things. But the main thing that we do, I think, and there's different levels of CERT training. The basic level, if you take it, it's a 24-hour class. CERT was actually started by Los Angeles Fire Department back in the 80s. And they realized the need. They studied a lot of different disasters. They went down to Mexico City, and it was interesting because, and as a CERT responder, if you have something major happen, you have all kinds of people come in to help. And I think it was mentioned earlier that those people are actually a detriment if they're not trained. We learn how to train people, we learn how to handle untrained people, and so we put them in jobs where they're okay. In Mexico City, there were 800 people who were saved from the disaster by their fellow citizens. But the cost was tremendous. It cost 100 lives because the people didn't know how to take care of themselves. So we teach you how to do that. We teach you to be mindful of things. We teach you if it's, there could be a situation where you don't go help somebody. There was I don't know if you saw it in the news not too long ago, there was a car that went into a power pole, and 2 women went flying in there and they got electrocuted. That might have been a good one to stay away from, huh? And we have procedures, we have training on how to handle those kinds of situations. The cool thing to me about CERT, you see several of us wearing these cool green shirts. We've earned these. I've done a lot of additional training, but CERT is a FEMA program. It's 24 hours. It's standardized throughout the country. And that teaches the fire suppression, the search and rescue, the medical, and all the other cool stuff. We try to train people. The number one thing to do it for is yourself. So there's a lady who lives here in Rossmore. Her name's Kathy. I won't say her last name because some of you probably know her. And she tells a story about how she used to be, if there was an earthquake or something significant happening, she would start screaming and start running around, and her husband would have to kind of hang on to her to try to just keep her from hurting herself. She is now an advanced CERT member, and she's the one hanging on to him because he's running around, and she knows how to handle things. it's just a matter once information and training is very, very powerful as you deal with the kinds of situations that we might be facing. And who knows, we could be at Target, we could be at Ralph's, we could be at Disneyland, but you still are trained in a way that you can actually help people. And we had one CERT member that was in a grocery store, her baby started choking, and she was able to save the baby because it was an issue. My wife and I were on vacation. A guy fell, hit his head. There was a nurse there. We deferred to her. She's got a higher level of training. She deferred back to us. My wife just happens to be a former firefighter EMT, and I have some pretty good training. And we're trained in response, not operating rooms. Well, I was trained in an operating room too, but that's different. So think about CERT. We have a website. We have a whole bunch of information outside. That will probably be the #1 practical thing that you can do to reduce fear, to increase your competency in dealing with a disaster, and perhaps saving yourself, your friends, your family. And you're more than welcome. If you have that inability to say no, like some of us, you can take the advanced training and get the cool green shirt and get called out. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
I'm fortunate that I've worked for a company, a Fortune 100 company, that does an outstanding job of emergency preparedness. And that's where I got my training in it, professional training. I grew up in Tornado Alley, so I've got some natural abilities there too. But this company hires their own professional CERT trainers to come in and train their staff. I mean, they are ready. It's the North American headquarters of Toyota, and they have their own emergency operations system and buildings and trailers and on and on and on. So CERT is widely recognized, as Wink said, and isn't it great? It started right here in our backyard. Next, we're going to have Captain Don Farrell, and he's going to talk to us about the Los Alamitos Unified School District, our very own home school district. And I'm going to need some student volunteers to join me, please.
What's that?
Sorry, I thought you had slides.
No, I have no slides. So I'm going to talk to you, I don't have any slides, so I'm going to paint you a couple of word pictures. I'm going to first tell you a little bit about the Great Shakeout and what the potential is for an earthquake. I'm going to scare you a little bit, and then I'm going to reassure you a little bit. My background is emergency operations. I have 33 years experience of law enforcement in the city of Los Angeles. For 8 years I ran the emergency operations section of LAPD, and then for 3 years I was the counterterrorism and critical infrastructure captain for the Port Police in Los Angeles. I had the pleasure of being on the committee that designed the first Great California Shakeout exercise with Dr. Lucy Jones up at Caltech and the U.S. Geological Survey team. And that earthquake was an 8.8 earthquake that hit on the San Andreas Fault down by Salton Sea. Now, one of the things that I hate is the term epicenter. You guys all hear epicenter, that the epicenter of this earthquake was 7.3 miles east of Murrieta, and it happened 23 kilometers down in the earth. And then you pull on the shape map, or you go to the map, or the news shows you the map, and they show you this point of ground, and then they show you the little rings coming out from it, right? That is not an earthquake. An earthquake is like a zipper opening. When the earth moves, the plates move. It's not a single point. It is on an 8.8 earthquake on the San Andreas Fault. The earth moves along a 250-mile length, like a zipper opening that length. So don't think about the term epicenter. Think about the fact that that when an earthquake happens, the earth is either plunging up and down or ripping side to side. Now the 8.8 earthquake in the original shakeout was actually designed as a north to south rip, because that projected the majority of the energy into Mexico. The reason they did that is if it had been a north to south rip in metropolitan Los Angeles, it would have been unmanageable. It would have shaken us back into the Stone Age, and we would have had small pockets of people doing things that were geographically isolated by every freeway, storm channel, river. Downtown Los Angeles, in the event of the 8.8, even ripping south in the financial district, would have had 12 feet of glass filling the streets from the high-rises. So if you got 3 days worth of supplies in your car, good for you, if you can make it down to the garage. If you think you're coming home after 3 days and you work in downtown LA or downtown Los Angeles, you're fooling yourself. 7 days to get people out of downtown Los Angeles because of all the damage and all the freeways down. 2 days to get out of downtown Long Beach. That's if you've got your backpack and you can get to it and you can walk back here to Rossmore. Think about that. Put yourself in the place of a 29-year-old single mother with 2 kids in our schools who works in downtown Long Beach. Pretty scary, huh? When you think about 7 days or 2 days, if you can get out of the building through the glass, to fit and take care of your kids. So you better have a plan. And the plan, 3 days is the minimum if you're in your house when the event happens. If you've got kids, if you've got people you care for, then you better have a plan for alternate people to pick up your kids and to take care of your kids. Do I have everybody scared? That's a scary scenario. What I can tell you now is to relieve your fears that your grandchildren, your children will be well taken care of. One of the things we did when I first got hired as the district safety and security consultant for the district was conduct what they call a risk assessment at each of the sites in our community, each of the school sites. And what you do is you take all your threats and you list them. Everything from the active shooter from Sandy Hook to an earthquake, we know what's going to happen, to a kid getting backed over by a car, to a custody dispute, and a pissed off parent showing up, excuse my language, showing up and demanding their kid, to student-on-student violence, and you list them in a big list. And you say, this is everything I can conceivably think about going wrong at this school. And then you look at the vulnerability of the school to that. And you say, okay, my school is vulnerable to this threat, a molester coming on campus or an attempt kidnapping to a kid, because the fences aren't good. So I can see that my campuses are vulnerable to this. And then you look at the consequence. If the bad thing happens at your site, what's the consequence? If an active shooter shows up at Los Alamitos High School, how many students could that active shooter potentially kill? And then you work it backwards and you say, I can't reduce my threat environment because that's just the state of the world as it is. But how can I reduce the vulnerability of my campuses to each and every one of these threats? And how can I reduce the consequence if the bad thing happens to each and every one of these threats? And so that way you can take and figure out how to compare fences versus more supervision on campus versus putting a strengthening film on the windows so they can't be shot affordability or the consequence of events on that campus. So that's what we did. And we came up with 15 recommendations for our campuses to make them safer in the next year. Those include putting a reinforcing film on all the windows on all of our campuses so that in an active shooter scenario, you can't shoot through the little window in the school door, reach in and unlock the door and get into the students. 80% of the school shooting scenarios, the classrooms were locked down, but the shooter was able to overcome the lockdown by shooting through the glass through the door. So we can solve that problem with the film on the windows. We've put lockdown kits in every one of our classrooms. 450 of them were purchased by the district. One of the things we never thought about was if you keep kids locked down for 5 hours, you think they have to go to the bathroom? You think they'll get thirsty? There you go. We went out to a local company and we bought 450 lockdown kits. That kit has light sticks, water, emergency food, a radio, sanitary wipes, has trash bags and a powder that you put in there so that when people use the sanitary facilities that it deodorizes and manages it. Right there. Make sure that your kids are safer and more comfortable if we have to lock them down. Or if we have earthquake hits and we have to keep them for a couple of days. We have food, we have water, we have additional supplies and containers. So the 15 recommendations that are made. We now have more supervision on our middle school campuses. They're going to be wearing these shirts so that they're highly visible. All our campus supervisors on the high school campus are going to be wearing these shirts. We're participating in the Great Shakeout. Our program for our schools, you'll see these signs up around every one of our schools in Rossmore, in Seal Beach, in Los Alamitos. If you see something, say something. As you're going around our schools, for those of you who take your afternoon or morning walks, walk around the school. If you see something, say something. If there's a hazard, a danger to our students, a danger to our staff, a danger to our community, say something, and we'll get going on it. Thank you very much.
Okay, now we have drawings. But before that, I'm going to show you how easy it is to start your emergency preparedness, your disaster preparedness plan today. All of you had a white piece of paper on your seat when you sat down, and it's got a number 1 on it with a whole bunch of list of things, and then number 2 and number 3. That's our 3-step E-Prep. My Emergency Preparedness Committee friends and I, we sat around at a couple of meetings. Our monthly meetings are on the 3rd Thursday of every month, right here in this building, next door over. And we took 12 professionally made emergency preparedness, disaster preparedness plans made by everybody from FEMA down all the way to our local Orange County agencies. And we tried to distill them down into something that would be simple, undaunting, and made specifically for seniors. There are some senior brochures we looked at that were written in 10-point font and were paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. I didn't want to read them. I didn't even want to look at them, but I had to make myself find something for you. So in your 3-step E-Prep, there's some also color 3-fold ones of the same thing. But we're going to start out with item number 1, and that is supplies. Okay? You need an extra pair of glasses in your emergency kit, in a glasses case. You need keys. You need medication. Not 3 days worth. More than that. More than that. I would say 2 weeks worth. So what we're going to do here with my helper, Joshua, who, by the way, is 1 merit badge away from being a Life Scout. And life is high as you get before you get Eagle. I went on a scavenger hunt. It was a lot of fun. I went through my house looking for things that I could put in my go bag, because on your list of supplies, first thing you're going to do tomorrow is you're going to put together a go bag, and I'm going to show you how easy it was. I went walking through each room, and I looked at that list that you're going to have there, and I said, what have I got today? What can I just start today? And that's what we're going to do. So Joshua's going to dump this on the table. I want to put things in the bag. The go bag is one of my son's old backpacks from school. If you don't have an old backpack, get any kind of bag that's got a shoulder strap. The idea is whatever you put in the car, if you're in your car when a disaster happens and you decide you're going to walk somewhere, like walk home, you need to not be carrying things in your hands. You need to have the weight on your shoulders. Here's the backpack. Any proper Boy Scout knows that we always put the heavy things in first, right? Okay. Well, we're going to pretend like this is Gatorade, and we would put that in first. This one's empty, and I'll tell you why I put that in there. Then, you're going to tell them what we've got.
We've got a box of Nutri-Grain fruit bars.
Right. These aren't the expensive power bars, but remember, I just went through the house 10 minutes. I made a drill out of it. It was fun, okay? Flashlight, already got batteries in it. If you win this, take the batteries out. It'll last longer that way. Put the flashlight in there. I went through. This is like zip ties, Ziploc baggy things, chopsticks, safety pins, rubber bands, fasteners. Put things, little things in bags, because if you just put them in there loose, what's going to happen? They're all going to get smashed in the bottom. Especially if you start putting cans of Gatorade or Diet Coke or something in here, bottles of water in here, everything's going to get pulverized. Remember the medicine? Here's a little pill jar for you. This is just, the days of the week. Don't forget the regular old Tylenol, aspirin. First aid supplies, ace bandage, a pre-made first aid kit, gloves, we've got wet naps, we've got eye drops, we've got alcohol swabs. I just went through and just grabbed a bunch of extra stuff. So this is like first aid. Garden gloves, leather gloves. Going to be broken glass. If you decide that tree branch is in your way and you want to move it, you're going to need some help here. This doesn't really go in your kit. This is my little gift to you. This is like a water safe. This is for like you put your keys in when you go boating, you put the lanyard on so you don't lose your keys. Put keys in it, put money in it, and bury it somewhere in your yard. If your house burns down or your house gets broken into, you're going to know where this is. Nobody else will. That doesn't really go in here. I'm going to put it in here. Okay. What's this got in it? Pull it out. Money. Money. What does that say on that? How many zeros is that?
6.
Yeah, $1 million bill. Not a good idea. You need lots of small change. All right? If there's any vending machines that haven't been vandalized, you want the food that's in there if there's any electricity running. Okay? So, here, I have $1 million on me. Put the small change in here. Orders, small bills. Also, if you just happen to be over at the local convenience store because everybody else has had a run on their stores or the stores have been vandalized and they've got 1 gallon of milk left, and he says, gee whiz, lady, my cash register doesn't work, and all you have is a $20 bill in your hand, guess how much that gallon of milk is going to cost? $20. Or he'd sell it to the person behind you for $20. So, small bills, small change. Communication tools. Whistle. Gotta have a whistle. Okay? Post-it notes. You're going to leave breadcrumbs if you remember Hansel and Gretel. If you decide to get out and go walk, and you're in your car and you're stranded somewhere and you're going to walk home, Leave a note where you're going. These are Post-it notes. Leave several notes where you're going. Part of our family emergency plan is if my son is going to be coming home from school by himself and I'm going to be trying to meet him, we have a path that we're going to meet each other at. And he's going to leave notes along the way, and I'm going to leave notes along the way. So think about that, because step 2 on your list, that your 3-step E-Prep, is your plan. So pens, pencils, Sharpie. Got to have a Sharpie in your go bag. Who knows what you're going to be able to write on or when you're going to write on it. Sharpie will do that. Food, this is like complete meal. It's like a backpacking kind of thing, but not the cost. You can buy this at your local grocery store. Big plastic tarp, thick plastic. What can you do with a big piece of plastic, 9 by 12?
Cover yourself.
Yeah?
Ground protector.
Yep. Tent.
Tent.
Water collection. Raincoat. There you go. So this is just a painter's tarp, disposable painter's tarp. Just something I had laying around. Hat. Ladies, if you're going to get out and walk, you need to not look like a lady walking down the street by yourself after a disaster. Put your hair up in a hat, right? Okay? Get a jacket, a men's jacket, a big one, like, get yourself, make it look bulky, right? So that from a distance, walking down the street, you're not looking like that anymore. So, something, nondescript. So we put a hat in there. Good for sunscreen, too. Okay, if you're feeling a little malnourished, you've got plenty of water, we've got Gatorade to add to your water. Okay, so one last thing. I was looking for some duct tape, but I found some packing tape. That'll help. It'll work. It'll be a start. You can use this for first aid, for a splint, to mess around with your tarp, all kinds of things. So this is how easy it was just to go on my little scavenger hunt in the house today. So I throw it in the car tonight, and when I get around to going and buying proper emergency supplies, then you go back and switch things out. Things in your car age, really hot in there. So you got to watch the batteries. If things spring a leak, well, I've got all those things in other little separate plastic bags, so that'll help. Okay. This is a light stick. I'm going to give that to you for being my helper. Water, 8 pounds per gallon, right? Hard to carry on your back, and it takes up the whole bag. So get a web belt, or in this case, I've got it tied to this. Make a shoulder thing out of this, okay? So you're gonna have your backpack on, and carry your water that way. A lot easier than trying to carry it in your hand. You need how many of these in your car? 3, right? A gallon of water a day times 3, that's what they said. Okay? Whatever you have the water in, you might consider having a double function. Like that, a honey bucket is what we call that. Or you might have it as something like a milk crate. So, we're going to give this away to one of our, this is your glasses case you get too. We're going to give this away to one of our Homeowners Association members. I'm going to reach in here and mix these up and grab one. Close your eyes. Can you read that? It says Shirley Linsky. Well, congratulations, Shirley. So, what are you going to do tomorrow? You're going to call your doctor and ask him about what it takes to get more medication, right? After you get your little emergency go bag put together, okay? So if you refer to also on number 2 of that list, talks about make a plan. Discuss the plan with somebody besides your family, like your neighbors. Your neighbor's going to be your first responder, right? Make a plan if you're going to stay, or make a plan if you're going to go. There's 8 exits out of Rossmore, right? You know that? You've noticed that maybe during school time? Okay. In my profession, I take design courses on what to do to make buildings safer for people who are panicking. So there's stampedes that can be done with cars, you know, not just people stampede, but people stampede in cars. If we all decide to leave Rossmore at once with 8 exits, it's going to be a challenging situation. So consider that in your emergency plans. You need to have a stay plan and a go plan. Last thing, stay informed. We heard about our reverse 911 through Alert OC. Register. You can do it by phone or you can go on the internet. There's other ways you can stay informed, but if everything goes down, that means television, radio, everything. You're going to have old-fashioned transistor radio with batteries, things like that. Okay, this is what that 3-step e-prep looks like that you have. Okay, and see over here, here's your go bag. This is big print checklist. We've pared this down to the very minimums. This is just so you get started with something today. There's a lot of information out there for you on the internet and in brochures and flyers. This is just, like I said, get started with something today. Okay, so page 2, make plans. Yes, consider fire safety. Not only aftershocks after earthquakes, but also fires after earthquakes. Okay, here's contact information for CERT. Here's the Emergency Preparedness Committee meeting information. Get on my email list. I'll send you information on the next speakers are coming and give you information on free brochures and publications that we do to help you. Gentlemen, you ready for the color guard? Director Casey.
Thank you again, Cheryl. Please stand for the retiring of the colors. Scouts, attention. Color guard, attention. Color guard, advance. Color guard, halt. Color guard, salute. Audience at ease. And I want to thank the audience for a nice turnout this evening. Thank you so much. Color guard dismissed. Oh, yeah.
On your way out through the lobby, please take the cards and put them in. There's a round plastic bowl on the RHA table. Thank you. I said that people still don't understand and hear the message. People see it, so they need to hear the message.
I think I got the message.
Yeah, I think so. And it lasted less than I thought.
Yeah, it's a good thing, though.
Yeah, well, you know, I really wanted something here for everybody. That's why I had some speakers. It's kind of like giving everybody an invitation or something. And I think that's good.
Very good.
And I really, I think you know this, but I really want to understand. Hello, you're on your phone.
Hey, you know, and the guy with the campus security, he really pushed it. I was trying to help a little bit on it. I didn't want to scare him. Basically, when something happens, when you call 911, it's not going to work.